Okay, buckle up. This is the story of how Karen, the OA president from hell, tried to take down my family's ranch, and how it all blew up in her face. My name is Jedediah, and I'm the third generation to run the Lazy J Ranch. We're talking about land that's been in my family since before this cookie-cutter suburban nightmare, planned community, sprouted up around us. We're talking about land grants and sweat equity, not some McMansion built on what used to be prime grazing pasture. I never bothered with the OA. Why would I? My property predates their existence by a good century. But that didn't stop Karen, oh no Karen, with her perfectly coiffed hair, her immaculate white SUV, and her unwavering belief that her rules applied to everyone, everywhere. It started subtly, with letters. Notice of violation, unsightly agricultural equipment visible from the roadway. Notice of violation, unapproved livestock present on premises. Notice of violation, excessive noise levels emanating from property during early morning hours, rooster crowing. Each letter was signed with the flourish of a self-important tyrant, Karen Miller, President, Harmony Glades Homeowners Association. Harmony Glades. The irony was thicker than the manure pile behind the barn. I ignored them. Figured they'd eventually get the message. I was wrong. Next came the fines. $50 for the tractor, $100 for the cows, $200 for disturbing the peace with my rooster, Hank. I threw them in a showbox labeled Karen's Comedy Collection. I was documenting everything, though. I had seen enough OA horror stories on YouTube to know that documentation was my best weapon. I even hired a lawyer, a grizzled old bird named Earl who specialized in property disputes. Earl told me, Jedediah, this is a classic case of affluenza. These city folk think they can just waltz in and change the way things are done. We'll fight 'em. Then things escalated. One morning, I found a section of my fence had been kicked down. Just a small section, but enough for a couple of my heifers to wander onto the perfectly manicured lawn of Mrs. Henderson, who promptly had a meltdown that likely registered on the Richter scale. I fixed the fence, filed a police report, and added a few more cameras to my growing surveillance system. A week later, someone spray-painted "Get Out" in bright red letters across the side of my barn. That was it. That was the line. I called Earl, who was already sharpening his legal claws. I also called my old friend, Billy Bob, a retired sheriff's deputy, and asked him to keep an eye on things. Billy Bob didn't like bullies, and he especially didn't like bullies messing with folks who had been on their land for generations. The cameras were my insurance policy, and I was checking them religiously. I knew Karen was behind it all, or at least orchestrating it. I just needed proof. The real nightmare began the following morning. I woke up to the sound of panicked neighing and the thunder of hooves. I bolted out of bed and ran outside. The barn door was wide open, and my horses, normally placid and well-behaved, were tearing around the corral in a frenzy. Someone had spooked them, bad. As I tried to calm them down, I saw the real damage. Several of the horses had broken through the corral fence in their panic. They were out, galloping through Harmony Glades. Chaos reigned. I could hear screams and shouts as I finally managed to get a hold of my prize stallion, Diablo. He was bleeding from a gash on his leg, and his eyes were wide with terror. "Hold on, boy," I muttered, stroking his neck. "We'll get you patched up." Then the calls started coming in. Hysterical residents reporting horses in their swimming pools, horses eating their prize-winning roses, horses trampling their meticulously landscaped gardens, and then the worst news, a woman had been kicked by one of the horses and was lying on the ground, screaming in pain. Another man had fallen trying to get out of the way and had broken his arm. My heart sank. This wasn't just vandalism anymore. This was serious. This was criminal. I called 911 and then Earl. "Earl, they've crossed the line. People are hurt." The paramedics arrived, followed by the police. The scene was a whirlwind of flashing lights, sirens, and terrified residents. I managed to corral the remaining horses, but the damage was done. Harmony Glades was in an uproar. Karen, of course, was there, directing traffic and looking smug as hell. "This is outrageous," she declared to anyone who would listen. "This man is a menace. He needs to be held accountable." I wanted to punch her lights out, but I knew I had to keep my cool. I just pointed to my security cameras. "Everything's recorded, ma'am. The truth will come out." The police interviewed me, and I told them everything, from the fines to the vandalism. I showed them the letters from the OA, the police reports I had filed, and, most importantly, the security camera footage. That's when the tables turned. The police spent hours reviewing the footage. And what they found was revealing. There it was, clear as day, Karen Miller, her face obscured by a baseball cap, sneaking onto my property in the dead of night. There she was, using a crowbar to pry open the barn door. There she was, tossing firecrackers into the corral to spook the horses. The look on her face when the police confronted her was priceless. The smugness evaporated, replaced by a look of utter disbelief. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. That's not me. But the police had her car, the immaculate white SUV, on camera too. And one of my cameras had caught a clear shot of her face when she momentarily adjusted her baseball cap. She was busted. The next few days were a blur. Karen was arrested and charged with multiple felonies, including trespassing, vandalism, animal cruelty, and assault. The OA board, realizing they were about to be embroiled in a massive lawsuit, immediately removed her as president. The injured residents, initially furious with me, were now directing their anger at Karen. They realized they had been manipulated by a power-hungry control freak who had put their lives in danger. Earl, my lawyer, had a field day. He filed a lawsuit against Karen and the OA for harassment, property damage, and emotional distress. The settlement was substantial. As for me, I used the money to repair the fences, upgrade my security system, and pay for Diablo's veterinary bills. He made a full recovery, thankfully. Harmony Glades was never the same. The OA was in shambles, its reputation ruined. Many residents moved away, disgusted by what had happened. The new OA president, a mild-mannered accountant named Bob, apologized profusely for Karen's actions and promised to work with me to ensure nothing like that ever happened again. I even got a few apologies from Mrs. Henderson, who sheepishly admitted that my heifers had actually improved her lawn by fertilizing it. Life on the Lazy J Ranch returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after all the drama. I still get the occasional sideways glance from the remaining residents of Harmony Glades, but I don't care. I stood my ground, protected my property, and exposed a bully for what she was. Karen, I heard, moved back to the city, disgraced and unemployed. I imagine she's still trying to control something, somewhere, but hopefully, she's learned her lesson. You can't mess with a rancher who's been on his land for generations. I still think about it sometimes, sitting on my porch, watching the sunset over the fields. It was a hard lesson for everyone involved, but it was a lesson learned. And it all started with a few silly letters, and a woman who thought she could tell me what to do on my own land. The moral of the story? Don't mess with a man and his ranch. And always, always, install security cameras. You never know when you might need them. Especially when you have a Karen in your neighborhood.